Caleb Dume was born on Coruscant 11 years before the outbreak of the Clone Wars. He was quickly discovered to be Force-sensitive by the Jedi Order, who took him to be raised at the Jedi Temple. One day before his initiate trials, he met Jedi Master Depa Billaba, who was recovering in a bacta tank after a disastrous defeat fighting against General Grievous on the planet Harun Kal. She almost immediately took a liking to young Caleb, and he hoped that she would choose him as her Padawan. He had an inquiring reputation that some masters found troublesome, but Depa found amusing. During one of his inquisitive streaks, he asked Obi-Wan Kenobi if it would be possible to alter the beacon in the Jedi Temple to warn Jedi of danger, an idea Kenobi would use in only a few short months. The day Caleb passed his initiate trials, Captain Rackham Seer of the Confederacy brazenly attacked the temple. Dume faced the terrorist by himself and was easily captured, but Billaba came to his rescue. Impressed by the 13-year-old, she invited him to become his Padawan, joining her return to the Clone Wars. His first campaign was to the planet Cardoa with Billaba's new battalion, which was itself led by the few survivors of her previous command, Commander Gray and Captain Styles. Caleb became friends with CT-1157, who had not yet received a nickname. They were ambushed by droids, and the fresh Padawan ventured too far beyond the battle lines. He was wounded but rescued by his clone friend, who stood over the boy, an act which earned him the nickname Stance. By the time Caleb had recovered, the battalion was ordered to move on to Megiddo. During the third Battle of Megiddo, they were pinned down by battle droids, but were rescued by the Mandalorian Finn Rau and his Skull Squadron. When they returned to their camp, they were attacked by General Grievous and Colonel Coburn Seer, who was the brother of the captain that attacked the Jedi Temple. Caleb defeated Seer and Grievous retreated, but Stance was killed in the fight. At the age of 14, Caleb and his master had moved on to the planet Collar, taking part in a Republic victory against the separatist General Cleve. After the fight, a Kalaran named Janis Casimir expressed his distaste for the Separatists and Republic alike, which earned him the ire of Caleb. In response, Billaba gave him a holocron so that he could study the role of peaceful dissent in war. That night, Order 66 was activated in clone troopers across the galaxy. Depa ordered Caleb to flee, and she gave her life to save him. He prowled the streets of Collar for several days, taking food from dumpsters until he was found by Janis Casimir. The Kalaran took pity on him and agreed to hide him and help him survive. It was then that the Jedi Temple beacon was activated, recalling Jedi to Coruscant. Unaware of the trap, Caleb stole Casimir's ship and traveled home. On the way, he received Obi-Wan's altered message and was able to escape the squadron of fighters waiting for Jedi to return. Casimir was understandably upset with Caleb, wanting nothing to do with him, so the young man followed the Kalaran until he was able to rescue him from some thugs to get back on his good side. Janis eventually came around and convinced Caleb to cut all ties with his past life. They worked together as thieves and smugglers, becoming friends, but all the while they were being tracked by Gray and Styles. During one of their jobs, they met back up with General Cleve, and Caleb was forced to set aside his old grudges from the Clone Wars. But the clones caught up to them and captured their former Jedi friend. His inquisitive nature popped back up, and he demanded the clones question their orders for once. They refused, and Caleb opened up the airlock, ejecting himself into space, where he was picked up by a trailing ship piloted by Casimir. The clones came about to open fire, but the spell of Order 66 was broken in Gray. He opened fire on his brothers to save Caleb and make up for the murder of Depa Billaba. Fearing that Casimir would never be safe with a former Jedi around, they parted ways, and Caleb took on the name Kanan Jarrus. For 8 years, he hid his Force sensitivity, working as a freighter pilot, bounty hunter, and more. He drank heavily and drifted from planet to planet to avoid making connections. Eventually, he made his way to the planet Gorse, where he worked as a freighter pilot for a mining operation on the planet's moon. It was there that he met Hera Syndulla, who was investigating a newly arrived Imperial named Count Vidian, intent on finding new and cruel ways to improve mining efficiency. Enamored with Hera, he helped her take the Imperial down, and they also ran afoul of Captain Ray Sloan. By the end of Hera's mission, she had learned of his Force powers and invited him to become a crew member on her ship, the Ghost. For 6 years, they worked together, built their crew, and were occasionally romantic. On the Outer Rim planet Lothal, they met a 14-year-old Force-sensitive boy named Ezra Bridger. On their first adventure together, Kanan revealed himself as a lightsaber-wielding Jedi to the Imperial Security Bureau agent Kallus, and began to embrace his Jedi heritage once more. He offered to train Ezra as a Padawan, which proved to be frustrating since he had never completed his own training. When he heard that Jedi Master Luminara Unduli was still alive, they attempted to rescue her, but fell into a trap set by the Imperial's Grand Inquisitor. They escaped, but Kanan knew he was being hunted yet again. Kanan was eventually captured and taken to Mustafar, where he would eventually be questioned by Darth Vader. But the crew of the Ghost, Bail Organa, and Ahsoka Tano came to his rescue, and the Grand Inquisitor was killed. Darth Vader and 2 more Inquisitors were then sent after Kanan and Ezra as they joined a rebel cell known as Phoenix Squadron. They met with 3 clone troopers, and Kanan was again forced to set aside old grudges and fears left over from the Clone Wars. They also, somewhat forcefully, recruited the help of the Mandalorian Finn Rau, who had saved Kanan on Megiddo so many years before. Needing guidance, Kanan, Ezra, and Ahsoka all traveled to the Jedi Temple on Lothal, where they each communed with Master Yoda. In Kanan's experience, he was officially elevated to the level of Jedi Knight. Yoda instructed Ezra to travel to Malachor, so the 3 Force users went together. Before leaving, Hera expressed her concern over their safety, and Kanan promised that they would see each other again. On Malachor, they met Maul and 3 Inquisitors. Maul sided with Kanan and Ahsoka, and all 3 of their enemies were killed, but Maul then turned on Kanan, blinding him. Darth Vader then arrived, and Ahsoka confronted him so that her 2 friends could escape. Hera was heartbroken at Kanan's injuries. Back at Phoenix Squadron's new base on the planet Atollon, Kanan began to neglect his duties as a master as he coped with his blindness. He met the Bendu, a powerful Force-using creature that claimed to stand in the middle of the light and dark sides of the Force. He helped Kanan to master his other senses and reconnect with his Padawan. After the Mandalorian crew member of the Ghost, Sabine Wren, came to possess the Darksaber, Kanan briefly took on a second apprentice, training her in lightsaber combat. His instructions allowed her to wield the weapon with enough skill to rally her family and other Mandalorians to fight against the Empire. When Grand Admiral Thrawn discovered the location of Phoenix Squadron's base, they retreated to Yavin 4, but the crew of the Ghost returned to Lothal to shut down the Empire's TIE Defender factories there. The attack was a failure, and Hera was captured in the aftermath. Kanan raced off to save her on his own, but was stopped by a Loth wolf that mysteriously spoke his old last name, Dume. He returned to his crew and requested that Ezra lead the mission to save Hera, fearing that his own feelings about her would compromise them. They successfully infiltrated the Imperial center of Lothal and saved her. Kanan and Hera were chased to the fuel depot of the city, and while they waited for Ezra and Sabine to pick them up, Hera finally admitted that she loved him, and they kissed. But as they boarded their getaway craft, the Empire opened fire on the depot, causing it to explode. Kanan held the fire at bay with the Force, sharing one final look with Hera and Ezra. His eyes were restored, fulfilling the promise he made to Hera, and then he pushed his friends to safety before the explosion consumed him. Since the death of Caleb Dume was the result of the destruction of the fuel depot, the rebel mission to Lothal wound up being a success. His presence in the Force comforted both Ezra and Hera briefly after his physical death, but ultimately his spirit passed into the cosmic Force. The example he made for Ezra enabled his Padawan to do something similar by sending himself and Grand Admiral Thrawn to an unknown part of the galaxy, allowing the rebellion to grow without the threat of the Master Tactician. Not long after his death, Hera gave birth to Jacen Syndulla, Kanan's son, who was likely Force-sensitive like his father. The story of Kanan Jarrus is, of course, mostly told in the 4 seasons of Star Wars Rebels. You can read about his life before the series in the 12-issue comic Kanan the Last Padawan by Greg Weisman and the book A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller. Both stories are great, but the comic actually includes one of my favorite Star Wars moments. But that's it for today. Are there any other characters you'd like to see me cover like this? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out my Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.